Offering the chocolate cake there and throwing it away. It's 10:15. You're listening to Retrospectives, and we have our guest in the studio tonight, David Bridie. How you doing, David?
All right, John.
Thanks for coming way out in the suburbs to see us.
Oh, it was a pleasant drive out the freeway.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
That's unusual. Yeah. You're all stocked up from the Easy Teller, so we can get going.
Yeah.
You weren't in the best of health last time I saw you down at the Universal Theatre a while back.
No, I had just come back from working up in Kundiawa in Papua New Guinea, which is in the Highlands, and came back, and about a week later I woke up one morning and could hardly stand up. I was hit by some fever of sorts. I don't know what it was. Yeah, but it knocked me around a bit for a few days.
But you're okay now?
Yeah.
That's good. How do you manage to psych yourself up to get on stage when you'd rather probably be home in bed?
Oh, it's funny that, you sort of kind of have to get all your systems working for it. It's kind of like, it's a bit of an effort to cancel a show, especially at late notice. So, it's funny. It's a bit like white line fever. I think you cross that line and you feel okay for the 2 hours, and then as soon as you walk off stage, you kind of die.
You just find a corner and fall in it. Yeah.
Fall in a heap.
Now, a rather big tour followed that around the country. Is that the first time Chocolate Cake's done anything to that extent, isn't it?
Yeah, we went up to... we've mainly played a lot in Victoria and New South Wales and Tasmania, but we went to Western Australia and Queensland and New Zealand.
And you're pretty happy with the response?
Yeah, it was good, yeah. In some places in New Zealand it's very early days because the record was only released about 3 months ago there.
Mm-hmm.
But in Queensland and Western Australia it was really good. We had some really enthusiastic punters and a good time.
And was it mainly theatre shows or a few pubs as well?
No, pubs as well, yeah. We did... there's a great venue in near Fremantle in Perth called the Fly By Night, which is this old aircraft hangar. It was quite big. A lot of acts go and play there, Chris Wilson and Stephen Cummings and Deborah Conway, and it's holds about 400. It's a no smoking venue.
Oh yeah.
And it has really great sound quality, and and the people who run it are real music lovers, so that's a real joy to go over and play at a gig like that. So it's kind of halfway between a pub.
Yeah. So how does life on the road with My Friend the Chocolate Cake compare with life on the road with Not Drowning Waving? Major differences?
Just different people, yeah. I mean, there's two women in Chocolate Cake, so it's a bit of a different kind of life on the road than it was with Not Drowning. And Andrew Carswell, the mandolin player, always brings along this football, so we kind of have a bit of a kick around.
Mm-hmm.
Airport lobbies and motels and stuff. We haven't broken anything yet.
Yeah.
Just a lot of boredom on the road, a lot of waiting around. And
I imagine it'd be a bit cheaper to take on the road.
Yeah, there's not as much gear.
Mm.
And the PA requirements are a lot less. So yeah, it's a more it's an easier band to tour. It's a lot cheaper, and it's quite an expensive business out there.
Yeah. What about off the road? What major differences are there?
Different people. Yeah,
again,
is the main thing. Well, it's just different musicians. There's like 4 very different musicians. There's a lot more melody in Chocolate Cake, whereas Not Drowning Waving was probably more percussive. And Chocolate Cake kind of started with a very simple attitude. We just sort of have a good time with it, as well as we're sort of serious with the music. But starting a band when you're over 30, I think, is different than starting a band when you're just 20. Because when we started Not Drowning Waving, everyone was pretty young. We all had these wild ideals and stuff, which was great, but it's just kind of a sort of a different vibe on the road.
Yeah. So which band is going to be occupying more of your time in the upcoming year or so?
My Friend the Chocolate Cake, Not Drowning Waving's probably not doing anything anymore at the moment. We're sort of
really
long recess. So yeah, a lot of Chocolate Cake stuff and film stuff with John.
Mm-hmm. Well, just going back to Not Drowning Waving, a lot of their early work, in particular, was a quiet, atmospheric sort of thing. Was that sort of hard to gain acceptance in pub-type venues when you were playing in those early days? In the nature of the music?
Yeah, I guess so. You'd tailor... I mean, if you're playing in a pub, we'd play the louder material. We'd spend most of the time in the set pushing it a bit harder than on a record, because in a record people are sitting down listening to it in the living room. It's a different kind of relationship between the listener and the music than in a pub. And for some reason, I don't know, we put Another Pond out first before we started touring. So when we started playing live, people knew the material. So we're actually lucky that we got okay crowds at our early shows, and they kind of knew what to expect too.
Right.
So people weren't
going in cold. Yeah. A lot of the early reviews I remember reading, the word ambient always used to come up. That used to annoy you?
Yeah, it kind of did for a while, because at the time, ambient records were things like Discreet Music by Brian Eno and those kind of records that were very background and very methodical, I guess. And there was a whole lot of stuff that Nocturne Waving did in those early records, Hunting for Nuggets and Storm, and songs that were very percussive and had verses and choruses and stuff, and they weren't very ambient at all. My only complaint was that that one term kind of branded the whole music, whereas doing a whole lot of other things. Did
that sort of prompt you to want to change the style a bit, or do you think you would have gone in that direction anyway?
We had two percussionists in the band, and 1/3 of the band played drums, so we kind of had to
had to use them.
Had to use them, yeah. And great drummers too. So So that was a natural progression to go into.
Anyway. Okay, we want to take the title track from Another Pond. Okay. And the title track of Another Pond. That's over 10 years ago now.
Yeah, it's very old.
Yeah, you're saying you haven't heard it for a while.
No, not that sort of. It's 1984, I think that record was made in a living room in Windsor. That Bill Tolson, who was the manager of Rampant Records, it was his house, and he had an 8-track there.
What happened to the old Rampant label? They had a lot of good acts on there at one time.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff came from there. Bill, the label folded. Bill went into management for a while, and I think he's still doing that now. But yeah, there were some good acts in it. Sea Stories and An Ordinary Field, and
I think the Hollomen were on there for a while too.
Yeah, the Hollomen were on there. Stephen Cummings was on there for Lovetown.
Yeah,
which was a great record. Andrew Pendlebury was there. Punk band Depression were there. Blue Ruin. The Oddlights. It was a bit of a thriving.
Yeah, it was, and they sort of vanished, just like that.
Yeah. The good thing about Bill Tolson and then was that a whole lot of those bands were just coming off the street pretty much, and if he heard something that he thought was really good, he'd put it out, and that was the case with Nocturne Waving. John and I had just done a demo of a song of Moving Around, which was our first single, at La Trobe Uni it was, and we just took it in off the street to Bill, and he said, "Oh, it sounds great." Put it out.
So yourself and John basically founded the band. Where did you guys meet up?
In a shared household. His girlfriend lived in this house. John didn't actually ever live in it. It's just one of those things that answered an ad. In Parkville it was.
And what were the circumstances around sort of getting a band together? Just one of those crazy things that happened.
Yeah, we were just talking. John played the guitar, and we sort of liked similar records and stuff. And I demoed these 2 songs and wanted a guitarist to come and play on it. And we sat down with John with an 808 drum machine and a keyboard and a 4-track, and the guitars and a microphone, and put down these. And it just seemed to click.
Away you went. So were there any musical influence that you wanted to carry over into the new band at that time? Do you remember, or?
Yeah, I don't know. It was sort of like there's a lot because I played the piano and she played the guitar. It was we mixed together a lot of stuff that was just based around those 2 instruments, and Those Zeno records were quite influential. I mean, John really liked the Robert Fripp guitar stuff, I think. But we listened to a whole lot of stuff. The Laughing Clowns. We were listening to a lot of kind of independent Australian music from both Melbourne and Sydney. And it was kind of, you had the idea that anything was kind of possible, even though it was pretty cheap and thrown against the wall. It
was around the time of the Acclaimed album that things started to pick up for you. You started to get a bit more notoriety. Do you think at the time? Do you think you were doing anything different that brought that around, or?
I think we were just better at what we. I don't think the songs were necessarily better, although I think some of them are. But we just got better at recording, better at singing, better at had a bit more money to be able to produce the records a bit better. Took us a long time because we released quite a lot of records. We released 4 records in the first 4 years, so we were just chucking them out
pretty quickly, yeah.
And we did it all independently and very cheaply and all self-funded. Claim was the first record that we had a little bit of assistance, or wasn't that much. But yeah, just experience. I mean, like anybody with their job, the more time you spend,
you just hone your act. Yeah. Okay, we might take the Willow Tree from the Acclaimed album. From the Acclaimed album, about an old home of yours.
Yeah, house in Richmond in Francis Street. That I drove past the other day. I lived there with about 4 other people about 8 years ago. And I had a big willow tree in quite a rambling backyard, which hence the song title. But I drove past it the other day, and it's now been split in half and sold as 2 separate houses and all done up, and
like townhouses now or something.
Yeah. So it didn't look anything like what it used to, but we had a lot of fun there.
How important would you rate the visual side of a live performance? Because you've done a few visual additives to your shows over the years.
That was it was good. With Not Drowning Waving, I think we kind of set out to do it because I don't think. I mean, it was something. I think visuals go well with music. And we didn't think we had much of a stage act, so we thought if we could put some good visuals there, people would watch that, not us.
Not you.
But I mean, with Chocolate Cake we don't use visuals, but I mean, people like Hope are quite animated and quite good to watch on stage, so I think it's good to have something that's visually makes an impact.
You looking at perhaps going into the visual side of things with Chocolate Cake, or are you happy to leave it as it is?
Oh, we don't mind mucking around with stage settings and putting some and putting some.
Yeah, like the little lounge room set up last time we saw you. Yeah,
kind of just grab little bits and pieces from everywhere. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're into.
I was trying to see who was on the front cover of that Listener In that was sitting right up the back there.
Bert Newton.
It was Bert Newton, wasn't it?
Bert. Yeah. Back in the 50s.
What prompted the original thought to go to Papua New Guinea and collaborate with musicians over there?
Jamie Southall, who's a percussionist in Not Drowning Waving, and myself went over there on a holiday in 1986, and we went to a lot of different places up there, but ended up in Rabaul, and which of course is no longer there because of the volcano eruption last year, but we met some people who ran a recording studio there and some of the local artists and the local bands, and hung out with them for a while. And they had a band from Hawaii called the Pagan Babies, a reggae band that was over there who was playing in the studio there, and got speaking with Greg Cito, who ran the studio there. They've now got a studio in Port Moresby as well, and Greg invited us back up to do some recording, and we were kind of interested in the idea of doing some recording with some of the local bands as well. And just flew from there, so it was a great opportunity.
Did you have any sort of preconceived ideas what you were going to expect over there?
James and I did because we'd been there before, but it was like, And it's like if you go on a holiday somewhere and you go back, you sort of imagine what it's like according to what it was like the last time you were there.
Yeah.
And the others who hadn't been there, but I remember we were really excited. We sort of got in a minibus to drive up to Sydney to catch the Air New Guinea flight to, and it was really good. It was. I think we just wanted to see how it went and take any adventure that came along. We sort of the bands up there are quite established. They're quite sort of it's quite a thriving music industry up there. So it was, part of it was like going to another city to record at a recording studio.
Yeah.
But culturally, there's obviously a lot of differences between Papua New Guinea and Australia. So.
What about the audiences over there? Their reaction to the Tabaran material compared to back here?
We played a few different gigs. We played this one show in Port Moresby at the Murray Army Barracks, and that was to about 15,000 people, and it was a free concert, and I don't think people knew what to make of it at all, except Telek was performing on stage with us, and Telek's quite popular up there, and so people. I remember they were really amused at. I sang one song in Quanouan, which is a Tolai language, and they thought that was pretty funny. And we sang this rugby song, this song called Go We Bugger Up.
Oh, yes, yeah. What is that about? I've seen the video of the Tabaran.
It's Go We Bugger Up is like, it translates literally as, brothers, let's all muck around, let's go to a party and get drunk, or let's go and, run around on the beach all night, or, but it's also the it's like the Come On Aussie, Come On up there, because it's the theme song for their for the Kumals rugby team. And but Helen playing the cello in the middle of that, the fact this white woman playing this cello is they thought that was pretty amusing.
Blown them away.
Yeah. So but I mean, there was people. There are a lot of people in Papua New Guinea who are very familiar with Western music, and for them, I think they kind of understood what was going on. But to a lot of the grassroots people, it was. But they all came and hung out, around soundcheck. As soon as we started setting up gear, there was 5,000 people watching.
Just to see you set up.
Yeah.
Goodness. You were over there recently?
Last November.
How's the rebuilding process going over there after the volcanoes?
When I was there, they hadn't started rebuilding. It was still kind of quarantined off, and you had to get past an army blockade to get in. And the town was totally devastated. It was really sad.
The studios you recorded out, I'd say, would have been wiped out.
Yeah, they were lucky in that because the studio's airtight for sound reasons, and it was a pretty strong building too. Most of the gear was quite safe. And they've got that all back in Moresby being cleaned now. But the devastation to people's houses and property and the whole town, I mean, it was a lush green place. It looked like the moon when I was there. It was just all grey and just, And everyone was living in refugee camps in Kokopo, which is like 20 miles away from the town of Rabaul.
Pretty horrific. Was it right you got some financial assistance from the government for that project?
Yep, we got $4,000 from the Australia Council.
How hard was that to get?
Murder. Anyone out there who's ever applied for an arts grant will know that there's a hell of a lot of paperwork for not that much money. But I mean, at the time, we funded that going out to Papua New Guinea all ourselves, and paying for the studio and paying for all the musicians up there and stuff. We just did a whole lot of shows at what was IDs, then it's now the Continental, and the arts grant, and we conned a bank into giving us a MasterCard that had a very high. That was the same amount as the arts grant application, except we had to pay ridiculous interest on it, and just some publishing money that we all pulled together. So
but it was all worth it.
Oh, it was fantastic. Best thing, best thing we ever did.
Going to take a couple of tracks from Tabaran. Going to take the title track with Talek.
Mm-hmm.
If you can give us a quick translation on that one before we go into it.
The lyrics are sung in Quanoan, which is the language that the Tolo people speak in Rabaul, and the words are about two brothers going out into the bush, and there being a spirit around, and the younger brother being really scared because he wasn't sure what it was. And it's a Tabaran spirit, and that's the name of the song.
He's got an amazing voice, hasn't he?
Talek, he's fantastic.
Yeah. From the Not Drowning Waving Tabaran album, we have the title track and Pillar Pillar. It's 10 minutes to 11 o'clock. We've got David Bridie in the studio tonight having a bit of a chat to us. Before we go on and talk about My Friend the Chocolate Cake, the Circus album, the last one for Not Drowning Waving, any particular reason why you went to Wales to do that one?
It was... we signed to Warner's in America for that record, and they also released Claim in the States. And Karen Berg, our A&R person, she was quite keen on us to work with a producer, Hugh Jones, and she thought it would be a good idea to go over to Wales to do it, and we thought, yeah, that's a great idea too. But yeah, probably a bit extravagant in hindsight, because the record actually cost quite a lot of money, and it didn't make back anywhere near how much it cost.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I didn't think it got a lot of radio response, really. No,
I mean, it sold as well as Claim had, but it didn't. It needed to improve a fair bit on that.
Yeah, you would have
it didn't get heaps of.
Yeah, it's a shame, really, because I thought it was a great album.
Yeah, we were all pretty disappointed by the reaction that Circus got. Yeah, no, I think it's there's some of Not Drowning Waving's best moments on some of the tracks on that record, and but then the breaks. We had a great. I mean, we recorded at Rockfield, Dave Edmonds' studio, and it's a beauty. It's a really lovely studio in the countryside in Wales, an old stables, and old country cottage. The studio was in the stable section. It's all redone up, and yeah, it was lovely.
So, My Friend the Chocolate Cake, just how did that sort of come about?
Helen and I were on in a minibus one day on a Not Drowning Waving tour, and we were just talking about getting together a band that, we could just play on Sunday nights, and at this old Druids Hall in Brunswick called Madigan's, that a guy named Paul Madigan, who's a musician himself, ran. It was just like it's just this hall, carpeted hall, with all this old lounge furniture and an open fire and a grand piano and a bar. It was the best gig, and so we just thought it'd be great to get this, an all acoustic band together and just get a whole lot of friends to come and play some covers, and I had some songs that Not Drowning Waving weren't going to record again for another couple of years at that point, and so that's how it started.
Right. And since then, when you're writing, do you have in mind which band this song's going to be for, and or you decide that later?
It's self-evident, sort of. It's like when the song's written as to what band it'll work with. Yeah. Okay, we'll just take a quick track from Circus and come back to Wind It All Down. Okay. Film stuff, and Jamie was off playing with some other people, and I mean, everyone in Not Drowning Waving kind of had side interests, whether it be musical or otherwise. Russell was playing with us in those early days too, so it was kind of, I mean, it was pretty. We were a very lazy band, but actually both bands. But just in terms of live playing, actually lazy's not the right word. We were sensible about it. We didn't ever overplay, and so they didn't ever clash that much. Right. Commercial success, is this something perhaps a bit more hopeful for the Chocolate Cake than in the past? Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's certainly. It's a cheaper band to operate, so therefore financially it's easier to keep the bank balance above board. And that's really important with the band, because everyone's probably a bit old and sick and tired of sort of doing something for a hobby. But it's also about, you know, making records that are good enough that enough people want to go and buy. And you know, to sell 15 to 20,000 records, you know, something sort of. I mean, it's a necessary thing for us to be able to do, and how you achieve that is like I mean, you can't tell sort of what the ways to go about doing that, but
you don't spend a lot of time scanning the charts to see if you're there.
No, I actually had to be, had to be told by other people that we were getting. I've got a plan was being played on Triple M over the last couple of months, because it's not a sort of a radio station that I listen to that much. But they're scanning the charts. It's hard to tell. There's so much. There's a lot of good music out there too. I mean, it's really hard for bands to. I mean. Or any artist to sell a lot of records, and there's a lot of competition for people's dollars these days. I mean, it's not. I mean, number one selling acts aren't selling what they used to, and that goes all the way down the ladder too. Meaning that the bands that, you know, used to be selling 5,000 records are selling 2,000 records, and so yeah. I mean, if you keep a band going and alive financially, you're doing a good job.
Doing well.
And there's a lot of bands, a lot of really good bands in Australia who bang their heads against walls and, you know, have to break up after a while because for financial reasons or whatever. Yeah.
What about overseas interests?
The Chocolate Cake record is being released in the UK and Europe in a month. We're going over in May, or half of us are going over. Helen, Hope and I are going over for. And apparently I've got a plans being played in Manila, in the Philippines. Right. So the Thriller in Manila. So and a woman from Mushroom Records who handles the stuff in Asia was saying it was quite likely we could go over and play a few shows over there later in the year, so that'd be quite exciting.
You've got to hit Manila.
Manila.
How about that?
Bet you that's a corrupt little town.
You've done a bit of production work over the years for other artists. Is that a field you want to go further into?
Yeah. I just did a record with Christine Arnoux last year, and that's just, it'll be out in about March. There's a single, My Island Home, out at the moment. The Rompy Band song.
Yeah.
And I reckon that's going to be a great record. And Christine's a fantastic singer, a great woman, and yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that. Being a producer.
You did the last Archie Roach one too, didn't you?
Yeah. And that was a real pleasure. Archie's a great songwriter and a great singer, and going to be doing some playing with him over at Womadelaide in a couple of weeks.
Great.
That should be really exciting, Womadelaide, this year, if anyone's not doing anything. What's the weekend of the 25th to the 27th?
Last weekend in Feb, yeah, that's right.
In Adelaide, and there's some great acts on there this year.
Is there any person or band that you haven't produced that you'd like to have a bash at?
I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing something kind of a bit sort of guitar-y and thrashy next. I wouldn't mind having a go at something like that.
Right.
Look, there's lots of good artists, but yeah, the Plums are a band I wouldn't mind working with. I think they're pretty good. Production's sort of something good to work in an area that isn't your main area, I think.
Right.
So kind of just, think.
You don't end up sounding like a one-trick pony, or everything that you produce sounds like your own work.
Well, Christine's record had a lot of drum loops and stuff in it. It was a bit more edgy and a lot of samples and stuff, and that was great to work with that.
How about your film and television soundtrack work? How do you tackle an assignment like that? Do you draw on material that you've already got in store, or do you start fresh?
Sometimes. John Phillips, who I work with that, John was a guitarist in Not Drowning Waving, obviously. We've got a studio in St Kilda, and we've got a whole lot of sounds on sample that we sometimes draw on, but and sometimes we're good at recycling. We sort of sometimes if there's a piece of that hasn't worked somewhere else, we'll chuck it in at another place, but we're pretty fluid that way.
You've got one just recently out too, haven't you? Not Drowning Waving film soundtrack.
Oh right, Hammers Over the Anvil. Yeah.
What's that all about?
That was a film that we did the music for about 3 years ago. That
don't think the film's out though. I don't think.
The film was released.
Was it? Didn't do much.
Wasn't very good. I didn't.
Oh right. But the soundtrack is.
Yeah, the soundtrack was. It came up quite well. Yeah. But the film had Russell Crowe in it and Charlotte Rampling. It was based on the Alan Marshall story, I Can Jump Puddles, except it kind of all it needed was Sigrid Thornton and a paddle steamer, and it would have been a
great miniseries.
Yeah. I shouldn't say those things.
In your time, what significant changes do you think you've noticed in the Australian music industry in the 10 years or so you've been part of it?
I guess there's been a lot of changes over the last 10 years. I think the major record companies are signing a lot more left-of-centre acts than they used to, or independent acts or younger acts. All the major record companies now have a subsidiary independent label, whether it be a White Records or a I can't think of the names of the Polygram and Sony ones, but that's a lot more encouraging to younger bands. It's harder to sell records these days than I think it was back then, but I think Australian acts are a lot I don't think people have that cultural cringe that they used to. It's less so. I still think they do. It's funny, you go to an event like the Big Day Out, and some of the Australian indie acts sell as many records as Ministry or Fundamental or the Screaming Trees, but would play to like 1/20th the size audience on the day, and it's kind of but yeah, so studios are a bit cheaper nowadays too, because I think technology is bringing the price of that stuff down. And the other thing is that it's easier for acts in places other than Melbourne and Sydney than it used to be. I think it's quite healthy, the Australian music scene. There's, apart from record sales, there's lots of really good bands in a whole lot of different genres of music. Some great innovative dance music, bands like Snog. Some great, there's a lot of the black acts are, there's a whole variety of them now, and some great artists coming through. I mean, there's always been great Aboriginal acts, but they sort of haven't had record deals or been selling that much. And some great guitar bands and thrash bands.
Well, on the other scope of things, what about changes that you'd like to see? What gets up your nose?
In the music industry? Oh, boy. I don't know. Look, I've been really lucky, so I can't complain too much. But and I think there is more support being given to young bands now. So I don't think the change. I just wish. I mean, Michael Bolton and Mariah Carey still, sell thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of records. 500 times more than a lot of local acts, and that there's something wrong with that. And I don't think people's music taste is as bland as that. So maybe it's a radio thing, maybe it's a television thing,
and people just
maybe it's a record company thing, maybe it's people
just accepting what's served up to them. And
yeah. I don't know why that is, but it's a bit kind of it's a bit of a chicken and the egg. It's sort of hard to work out why those things happen. And sometimes you see, at pubs, young bands when they're playing a gig in a pub, the publican rips them off, those kind of things, a pain in the bum.
But that's always happened, really, hasn't it? Probably always.
Yeah, it's always it's part of the teething problem.
Yeah. All right, before we let you go, just a brief outline. What's 95 got in store for you?
I've got I spent a fair bit of time with my daughter this year. Should be good. I've got a 4.5-year-old daughter. John Phillips and I are doing a record together, so we're sort of working on that at the moment, and that's quite exciting. And we're doing a few film things together, and the chocolate cake stuff. We're going over to Europe, and we'll probably get another chocolate cake record together towards the end of the year. So they're the main things at the moment.
We'll probably keep it going for the rest of the year, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a fair enough.
And you've got a gig coming up at the Comedy Theatre in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, on the 18th. Great theatre, the Comedy Theatre, so we're quite looking forward to playing there. Saturday night. Yeah. So come along, anyone out there if they want.
We might just do that. I think we might. Okay, thanks a lot, Dave, for coming all the way out here to see us.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. We know how busy you are.
Thanks for inviting me.
Terrific. Thanks a lot.
See ya.